Good morning, afternoon, Math 2 crew. We're looking at question number 3 on page 458, section 8.7. Still solving quadratics using square roots. And let's read the question itself. Bria would like to display her collection of soap carvings on top of a bookcase. The collection takes up an area of 400 square inches. What should be equal for the top of the bookcase to have the correct area? Round your answer to the nearest tenth of an inch. So, the top of her bookcase. So let's look at the shape here, and the top appears to be here. And that's a rectangular shape. It's also the shape of the middle shelf, and of course the lower shelf. And so this is a prism. In geometry we learn about that prisms have a base, right? And that base is what determines the overall shape of the object. Okay. So, with that said, that's our shape. And it has an area of 400 square inches. Well, we know that since it is a rectangle, the length and the width determine the area. And we know that the length and the width are 3b and b. So this is similar to the previous question. So I'll write that down. The length is 3b. The width is b. And the area of the rectangle is found by multiplying length times width. We saw that that was 3b squared. B times b is b squared. So that's the area. Now the actual area we know is 400. So we can substitute. So for the value of A, it's 400. And so let's solve. Divide by 3. And so B squared equals plus or minus the square root of 400 divided by 3. Now again, we can find an exact answer by simplifying this ratio using radicals, using the quotient property. But what I'd like to do now is just use our calculator to find the answer to the nearest tenth. And so, again, it's not always the best way to do it to just jump straight to the calculator. But I will and see what happens here. So let's pull that calculator up. And I'm going to take 400 and divide it by 3. Get a decimal of 133.3, and it repeats. Now I'm going to take the square root of that. And so I raise that to the 1/2 power, which is 0.5 as a decimal. And so I'm rounding it to the nearest tenth. Oops. Let's go back. So that's 11.547. So it's going to be 11.6. So the value of B is positive 11.6. Talking about inches. If I was to find the exact answer, it would be different. And so I'm going to do that again for the sake of argument. So hold tight, sit back, and watch how I do this. All right, I've got my little barrier. Now, watch how I do this. We said that B was the square root 400 over 3. The quotient property says you can break that up. Now, the square root of 400 is 20 times 20 is 400. So the square root of 400 is 20 over the radical 3. Now in Algebra 1, if you have forgotten, it's time to remember. But there is a rule that says you are not allowed to have a radical in the denominator. It's because when you divide this to try to make it a decimal, you can't do it. If you go radical 3 divided into 20, it doesn't make sense. So you have to change this divisor to a whole number. And the way you do that is it's called rationalizing the ratio, or the radical, rationalizing the radical. I think, gosh, sometimes I forget these things. But what that says is you just take the radical and you multiply the numerator and denominator by the square root, or whatever the radical was. It could even be a cube. There we go. And why that works is because radical 3 times radical 3 is radical 3 to the second power, which undoes the square root, and you're left with 3. And so simplifying this, remember, this just becomes 3. It becomes 20 radical 3 over 3. Does 3 go into 20 evenly? Nope. So this is the exact answer for B. Now this is important, because now if I asked you to find the length and the width, and then find the area of that rectangle, you would find the exact answer, not an approximate answer using decimals. So if B is 20 radical 3 over 3, then the width, or the width, which is equal to B, you could find the length by multiplying this value by 3, and then find the area. And I feel like doing that, but I don't think I am. I really want to take it there. Part of me says to do it, so gosh. Guys, I'm going to do it. Here we go. Even though we already have B as a decimal, I'm going to keep going. So let's find the width. Okay, so we know the width of the rectangle is B. So the width is 20 radical 3 over 3. And so the length was, this is the width, and so my length was equal to 3B, which is 3 times B, and again, you have a whole number 3 and a denominator of 3, so you can cross reduce. This becomes 1. This also becomes 1. And when you multiply by 1 over 1, you end up just with 1. So the length is 20 radical 3. And so now I have the length and the width. And so the area of the rectangle is 400, but let's show that it's 400. And so length and width, just go over here. It's 20 radical 3, which is my length, times 20 radical 3 over 3. And let's see how this plays out. It's going to be nice. Okay, watch how this works out. There's 20 radical 3 times 20 radical 3 over 3. I want you to really see how this works. Don't be afraid. You can make this a fraction so that you can see how this works out. I'm going to multiply 20 times 20. It's 400. I get that. Okay, pay attention. That's 400. See it? Now, radical 3 times radical 3. We talked about this. Radical 3 times radical 3. That's radical 3 squared, which is just 3. If you take radical 3 multiplied by radical 3, you do get radical 9, which is still 3. Okay? I want you to focus. And, this is a side note. There's many ways to think about this. But radical 3 times radical 3, and again, I'm just showing you how I get my answer here. Based on the product property, you know that radical 3 times radical 3 can be written as 3 times 3, which is radical 9, and radical 9 is just 3, right? So there's also the idea that using exponents, would be squared, right? Square root, second power, undo each other, and the answer is still 3. So there's many ways to think about this. You get it clear in your head, though, okay? Radical 3 times radical 3 is 3. And it's all over 3 times 1, which is just 3. It gets a nice reduction here, and your answer is just 400. And just remember, too, that when I reduce, it becomes 1 over 1, right? But when you multiply by 1, it doesn't change. When you divide by 1, it doesn't change. So 400 times 1 is 400 over 1, and 1 goes into 400 400 times, so the answer is 400. And I just showed, again, why it's important to know how to keep answers exact with your radicals. All right, guys, like I always say, study hard and learn a lot. We will see you soon. Bye-bye.